it was a major victory for Trump because he was under pressure to show that his tariffs strategy is winning. It was something of a political victory for Keir Starmer because he managed to convey a message to people in the car industry, in the United Kingdom, in the aluminium industry, that look, because I have been quite skillful and moderate in my dealings with Trump, I've managed to bring down the tariffs.
Now, on Thursday, President Trump and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer proudly announced they'd come to an agreement on trade and tariffs, an agreement which, it must be said, is not really a trade deal in the traditional sense, as there is still a number of details to be worked out. But as Trump told reporters in the White House, the headline is that tariffs on a few key industries like steel and cars are coming down.
Both countries have agreed that the economic security is national security and will be working together as allies to ensure that we have a strong industrial base, appropriate export controls and protections for key technologies and industries like steel. Steel is a big factor. Both countries will become stronger with steel and things necessary for military. You know, we used to build ships and other things literally at a level that nobody's ever seen, and we haven't. We've eased up, and I would say that the UK certainly eased up, but now we're going to be uneasing both, and we work together.
Now, UK cars will be tariffs will be brought down to about 10%, and the steel and aluminium tariffs are going to be eliminated altogether. But the president is by no means abandoning his tariff strategy. Just a few days before announcing the US-UK agreement, Trump posted on Truth Social and on his site that he'd levy 100% tariff on all movies produced in foreign lands. Well, former finance minister for Greece, Yanis Varoufakis, has been giving some thoughts to what's behind Trump's strategy. And he joins us now. Kalimera, Yanni.
Kalimera, Alexis. Great to be back.
Yanis, what do you think, firstly, of this agreement? I don't think we can call it a trade deal, but we can call it an agreement between the US and the UK.
On the one hand, it was a major victory for Trump because he was under pressure to show that his tariffs strategy is winning. It was something of a political victory for Keir Starmer because he managed to convey a message to people in the car industry, in the United Kingdom, in the aluminium industry, that look, because I have been quite skillful and moderate in my dealings with Trump, I've managed to bring down the tariffs. But Trump is a real winner. And by the way, so is Brexit. But let me start with Trump first. He's a real winner because if you compare the status quo ante, what was the situation like 3 months ago, with today, after this trade deal? The result is that the United States is facing lower tariffs, greater access to the UK market, whereas the UK is still stuck with this 10% tariff, which is not even negotiable from the perspective of Trump. The second major victory of Trump is that he has driven an almighty wedge between the UK and the EU. Keir Starmer's hopes and secret or not so secret aspirations to bring the United Kingdom closer to the bosom of the European Union, well, that dream has now been sunk. Because unless, and this is very unlikely in my estimation, unless the United States under Trump strikes a very similar deal to that he struck with Starmer, with the European Union, the possibility that Starmer is going to bring closer the European Union and Britain, that has vanished. It's vanishingly small now. And remember that, Trump is a great Brexiteer. He loathes the European Union. He doesn't care that much about Britain, but he loathes the European Union. And I'm not passing judgment on that. I'm simply stating it as a matter of fact. And so he, two birds with one stone. He has had the opportunity to tell Congress, to tell the American people, see, my tariff policy is working. People are coming to me, significant world powers like the United Kingdom, and I get something out of it, which is more than they are getting. And now we're moving on to Japan, and we're moving on to Vietnam and so on.
But Yanni, was it really that good? I mean, the announcements on beef, for example, American beef's not going to be hurtling towards the UK because the SPS, the phytosanitary agreements, are still in place. So hormone-injected beef is not going to be coming to the UK. The digital services tax is still there. Okay, the negotiations are still to continue. Has the UK really given up so much?
Not really. Not in pounds and pennies terms. You're completely right, Mr. Alexis. But for Trump, what matters more is that he established a principle.
Right. I put tariffs up and people come to me and try and get a better deal.
Beyond that, the agreement on beef and the agreement on ethanol in particular effectively states very clearly that these products, United States products, will have a preferential treatment in the United Kingdom compared to similar products coming from the rest of the world. Now that, Alexis, violates the basic principle of multilateral trade deals at the level of the World Trade Organization. And there is one golden rule at the WTO, which was, if you want, the pinnacle of globalization. And that rule, you may have heard of it, it's the most preferred nation rule, that if you grant reductions in regulatory obstacles on some product for one country, then you should grant exactly the same reduction for other countries. Keir Starmer accepted not to do that. So in a sense, at least on paper, the United States gained access to the UK economy that France, that Japan, that other countries have not gained. And essentially, I don't know whether Starmer understands that. I suspect he does. Trump brought him on side to undo some of the basic principles of the World Trade Organization. That's a major political victory from Trump's perspective.
Yanni, I want to get your thoughts. I was looking at an interview you were giving. You were talking about Trump's desire to devalue the dollar. Why would he want to do that?
If you ask his economics team, this is more or less what they will say to you verbatim. The answer is because the money markets are not working well. If the money markets worked well, a country with a gigantic trade deficit should be seeing its currency coming down. That's the laws of demand and supply, right? And yet, even though the United States has been sporting a huge trade deficit for 4 decades now, the dollar is not coming down. So the next point they will make, that is the economic team of Donald Trump, people like Scott Bessent and Stephen Miran and so on, they will say to you that the reason why this is happening is because of our dollar. We are giving you folks, the rest of the world, that's who they mean by folks, we've been giving you a free service, the dollar. We have essentially provided you with the world currency. It is our money, but it is your reserve currency. And what happens is this. Every time, let's say, a Jaguar or a Land Rover is sold, or a Mercedes-Benz is sold to the United States, and that adds to the trade deficit of the United States, a wad of money, of dollars, goes to the British or the German or the Japanese or the Chinese company, and they do not convert it in their own currency. What they do is they hold it as dollars. Either they keep it in some bank account as dollars, or they send it to New York to buy treasuries, to buy real estate, to buy shares in the United States. So the dollar doesn't get sold every time there is an increase in dollar terms of the US trade deficit. Since the dollar is not sold, its value doesn't come down. This is why you have this exorbitant privilege of the United States dollar. From the perspective of the economic team of Donald Trump, this is a major burden for the United States, and they need to do something about it to devalue it by stealth. So the way they are seeing it, and I'm not making this up. I mean, I can direct you to their texts and to their speeches when they make those points. I mean, Scott Bessent was very clear on all this at the IMF back in April. He gave a very interesting speech in which, just Google it, Scott Bessent IMF speech. He talks there about the rebalancing of the world economy. Anyway, this is the objective, to devalue the dollar in order to make it even more hegemonic than it ever was in the history. But and allow me, Alex, just to add one little vignette to this. This is not the first time. Ronald Reagan, in 1985, brought the finance ministers and the head of states of the great and the good, Europeans, Brits, the Japanese, at the Plaza Hotel in New York, and effectively read the Riot Act to them, that if they do not devalue the dollar or revalue their own currencies, he's going to destroy them with tariffs. 1985, New York. Okay.
Sounds like we've been here before. Yanni, always good to speak to you. Thank you so much for giving us all this time. Really good to speak. Look forward to the next time we do.